first advice for people going on podcasts is do not take Adderall and drink cold brew.
Don't just shotgun a Red Bull before.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
A Monster, maybe a Celsius.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners, to the AI Wave Podcast, the only podcast that combines the world of AI and how Rhode Island could be the leader in the latest revolution. I'm your host, Chris Parisi, and today we're welcoming a very special and very familiar with the podcast, producer Shay Weintraub. So we're going to chat with Shay what it's like to produce this podcast. We'll gather insight into the future of media, production, and AI, and what tools are you using? What AI tools are you using for this own podcast? So she's going to share some tips, tricks, and tools and insights like no one else can. So tune in, get ready, and let's ride this AI wave with Shay. All right, welcome. We have a special guest today in the AI Wave podcast, a guest that many of you may not see, but we see every time we record because she's typically behind the camera. But today, ladies and gentlemen, she is in front of the camera, the one and only Shay Weintraub. Woo!
Here I am.
Shay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for allowing me to come in front of the camera.
Shay's just itching to get from behind the camera to in front of the camera. But before we get started, shout out to Shay. Shay's been doing a wonderful job producing this podcast. There's a lot of work that comes into when having a podcast. I just get to, come in here, have a little script. They tell me what questions to ask, smile and just come in here and leave.
And then you go out, you have your juice box, you have an orange slice.
Yeah, that's what.
And Mom picks you up in the minivan.
That's what we packed Caden for lunch today, actually.
That's adorable. Oh.
But Shay, and we also have Ezra in our team as well, and we have Tyler now filling in behind the camera. But Shay does a lot of great work, and just wanted to give you some props here.
Thank you.
And welcome to this side of the camera,
This
which
side.
she is very familiar with. Shay had her own podcast as well before, Anchored.
It was the Rhode Island's something about sea saltiest takes. I forget the motto, but it was a show about Rhode Island and the funny takes about Rhode Island, and it lasted for a little over a year, and it was shot right here in this studio, and that's where my first production part of podcast came in. I was a guest on a couple podcasts before that, and it was terrifying. Yeah, my first podcast experience, I took my Adderall prescribed, and I drank cold brew, and that was...
Oh, wow.
That was not a good idea.
That doesn't sound like a good idea.
That's my first advice for people going on podcasts is do not take Adderall and drink cold brew.
Don't just shotgun a Red Bull before.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
A Monster, maybe a Celsius.
So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got to this point where you are now producing podcasts.
Sure. So about the winter of 2020, 2021, I spoke with you about an idea for a podcast about Rhode Island, and it was Trailblaze Media, and that was the first show. We have a second show, Sex Ed Debunked, and it was about promoting the state, and what I got to learn was how to read off a teleprompter, how to set up lights, how to set up a camera. I had Ezra behind the camera, and that's when he was living here in Providence. Now he's all up in Portland, Maine. That Portland, not that Portland. And I just kind of learned the way of a studio, like how to set up a mic, what sounds good, what sounds bad. And
a lot of the pre-production stuff, too, which you were like, what? There's a lot of work that goes...
There is so much work that goes on before we even record here.
Right.
And it was a humbling experience, for sure. And I'm glad that I did it. I don't think without Anchored, I don't think this show would be half as good as it is. Even though Anchored is no longer in production, it still acted as a very good teaching tool for me. And that was invaluable. Mm-hmm. And it allowed us to have Sex Ed Debunked. It allowed us to have this podcast. It allows Trailblaze to have future podcasts that we produce. And that's where my production history started. I studied history, funny enough, in college, and that they don't really teach you how to work a camera.
No, but they tell you about the camera. They tell you about how there's the horse that they were taking pictures of along the way. Fun fact. And that's how a motion picture was created. But these motion pictures, these cameras we're doing, you talked about your history with podcast and what got you to where you're at today. And our podcast, the AI Wave, is about how is AI impacting all of us and how can we take advantage of this great once-in-a-generation opportunity. How has AI assisted you in this journey that you're doing now in the pre-production and post-production phases?
Oh man, in several different ways. I'll start with the way that I was most excited about, and that is in the post-production when I am putting the chapters into YouTube. And we have an AI tool called Cast Magic, and what you do is you plug in your video, your audio, and it'll analyze it and it'll spit out discussion questions, chapters. It'll spit out the whole transcript. It will give you talking points. It will give you quotes. It'll give you everything that an AI can take out of a transcript. What I like about it is the chapters that it gives you for the video. And what I love about ChatGPT is I will copy paste those chapter titles, put them into ChatGPT, make the titles a little more human, and then I say, can you please capitalize these in MLA style? And boom, I don't have to think about what goes up, what goes down. ChatGPT does. I was so excited.
That's funny. I was wondering where you go with that. I was like, wait, we're using ChatGPT as well? You're like, nah, just to literally write the titles that I came up with this other tool. Okay, cool.
And that's one simple way of saying like how ChatGPT or AI can help you, enhance you. So I don't have to I don't have to use my brain.
Right. But you could use your brain in many other areas because you save the time. You just talked about how, you get that recording and this magic just creates all of this that we normally would have to manually do. So that's a good tip out there, all those podcast producers. And what else?
What else? We have a tool called Autopod, and that is on our Premiere for our video part of the podcast. What it'll do is we have our 3 cameras. It'll cut each shot, the multicam shot. And so it knows when I'm talking. It knows when Chris is talking. If there's a lull, it'll just cut that out. If I say something and Chris reacts to it, you're not going to want to see my face. You're going to want to see his reaction. So it knows that. And it cuts.
Yeah.
And what is another example about how there still needs to be the human touch with it is you need to nest your sound when you plug it in, which means that if you have several different sound recordings, you can't just have all these different little pieces put into the sequence on Premiere Pro. You need to nest things on each line because that's what Autopod needs. So unless a human knows how to do that, then you can't use Autopod. So that's just an example of the human touch that you still need. So it saves hours of cutting. I messed up on an episode a couple episodes back, and I wasn't able to use Autopod. And it took me, I was working into the weekend cutting, and it definitely makes a difference. It saves a lot of time.
That's what, a big message that we're talking about in this whole AI Wave podcast is this new way we're going about doing things with AI by our side, and there's a lot of concerns, rightfully so, but there's a lot of great opportunities where you can now do more, right? And we still need that human component, whether it's like you just talked about, hey, you need to know these things in order, or even to know how to use the tools, right? So those are 2 great examples that you talked about on how you're using AI. Anything else you wanted to share with us, or do you want to maybe keep it a secret?
I would say a little piece of how it's helped me is because it saves me so much time in the editing process. I'm able to take that extra time and put it towards learning more. I'm still new relatively to all of this. And so I can go on Skillshare and I can watch a course by this teacher or that teacher. I can go on YouTube and see how something works. And I now have time to do that. And I don't feel like I'm like pressed for time. I'm like crunched for time in making this video.
Right.
Because
which makes you better, which helps the company that you're working for, or, you know, obviously Trailblaze in this case. But, like, you know, it's great that the company allows, you know, hey, you can invest your time into that because AI is doing this. So it's all about people at the end of the day, even an initiative like AI. Right? So we had some great episodes. This is episode number 12. So let's kind of take a look back. You know, you've listened to all these episodes
many times.
And what's some episodes or insights that really stuck with you after you click the publish button?
Well, to begin, Dr. Paul. One of his many bits of information that I really took with me was cleaning the data. I didn't know that data was dirty. I didn't.
Dirty little data.
Dirty little data. I didn't know that if you cleaned it, you would have better data for AI. And his example of if you go in your garden and you pull out a carrot, which is by far the most satisfying thing about having a garden, is just plucking the carrot. Anyway, you wouldn't pull out the carrot from the garden and eat it right away. You would go in and you would wash it and you would peel it. I almost said skin it. It's not socially acceptable. You would peel it and then you would eat it. And so AI data, or data itself, is the same thing. You need to clean it up to have a better output.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it's a lot of noise within the data.
That's a great. That episode is definitely one of our most viewed and favorite ones as well. I mean, I loved Prashanta in general. Shout out Dr. Prashanta Paul. But what I also loved about his positivity towards the end, because people are like, hey, you know, AI is going to take over the world. AI is going to solve, going to do all this work. You know, what's the point of it all? And he says, until we solve all of the world's problems, AI is just going to do the mundane. And now we can really focus on solving all of our world's problems with this extra time that we have. And no, we're not going to be just sitting bored. There's still a lot to do. Until that moment where we could solve the world's problem, that's when we can then sit back. But until then...
That'll never happen.
That will never happen.
We as humans are problematic.
Yeah, we like to create problems, 99 problems.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a hobby.
So that was a great point. That was a great episode. And obviously, you're using a lot of these tools when you're editing AI, but you said that it will create and save you time. Is there like a fear that even in your seat that AI is going to replace you?
No, I don't think so.
And why is that?
I say that because there are small things that a human needs to do that AI can't do. That require like some kind of personality. For example, in, I believe it was your first or second episode, there was a part where you were talking about something and I put like a bleep at it and it made it funnier. Turns out that's not the vibe of this podcast. However...
Side note, guys, listen. If you go to listen to that episode in a car like I did on 195, and all of a sudden you just hear this big beep, yeah. I literally almost got in a car accident.
Yeah, it's a good thing that your car drives itself.
Yeah, you're right. With AI.
Yeah, with AI.
But yeah, all right. You do need that personality that AI normally wouldn't do in editing. But also, you kind of mentioned people need to know certain things. You need to put the tools all together, and so you feel like it's not really going to replace you. It's just going to allow you to be more efficient in your job and maybe even do more, learn more.
Of course, and it's going to create a better accessibility for producers, for directors, for writers, everybody in the field of podcast producing, movie produce, all of that. So like think, and this is like more director, but like Wes Anderson has a very distinct style that take M. Night Shyamalan, totally different. They're both directors, but they have two completely different products. So if we have AI, yes, AI is not going to be the same every time, but it's going to be more similar to itself than two different directors. So
yeah, it's not going to have that uniqueness.
It won't have that touch. It might create its own. That is going to be really far into the future, which...
Maybe not. We don't know. But talking about that when it comes to creativity, like when we think of AI, we don't think of them being, and we said them, I should probably say it. We don't think of it being creative, right? Because that's like creating something out of nothing, right? Do you think AI has the ability to be creative? And second part to the question, Shay, do you feel AI helps or hinders your creativity as you're doing your role?
So I'm going to answer the second part of that question first because it's the freshest in my mind. I think it helps my creativity. It allows me to see things that I wouldn't have seen in the first place because I would be too busy. Like if it gives me like 4 sentences or 4 parts of an episode that are worth focusing on. Maybe I saw part A and B, I didn't see C or D, and so I'm just going to do A and B. I'm going to go full in. But now that I see C and D, I have more options and I can think about doing a different perspective. And when you have more options, more creativity.
That makes sense. It's like more modes of inspiration that you can then pluck from and choose from to put it in your own spin.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like if you watch the show Tournament of Champions on, I believe it's Food Network, they have this big wheel that they have to turn, and you get like a protein, you get a style of cuisine, you get how much time, and it's different every single time. And that kind of is like what AI is. They're not going to give you the same answer. If you ask it like a question that's XYZ, it's not going to give you the same answer if you have XYZ A1, A2. It's going to be different.
This is now sounding like algebra.
Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals
C squared.
Our math teachers would be so proud.
So proud. All right, so that's cool. It gives you more modes of thought, more inspiration, more tools in your toolkit that you can choose from to be more creative. So in a way, it doesn't hinder your creativity, but it helps it, and it doesn't replace you or the job. Well, I got a question. Would AI, can one day replace the AI host, the podcast host? Am I replaceable? Am I going to be replaced? That would be actually kind of cool. If the AI Wave podcast host is AI. I wonder if that will happen. I guess I could ask myself that question too, but I asked you first. So
the question is, will
AI have the capabilities to replace a host of a podcast? Because we're talking about behind the camera and post-production and pre-production. It's really sweet. We didn't talk too much about that. But what about production?
I would hope that anybody creating a podcast, if their host is AI, the point of the show is that the host is AI.
Did we just create AI Wave version 2? We got to explore that. Let's replace me. Get me out of here and replace me with AI and have an AI. No, they're not going to have a personality. They're not going to be Italian, always using their hands hitting the mic. That's a good example of, it's probably hard. See, I'm doing it. Probably hard to replace a host that needs to have this natural conversation with others and have that human component.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Every late night show where a host steps down or passes away, it takes them a while to find a next host because they need to get the personality right. They can't just replace them with anybody.
No, you cannot replace Conan O'Brien.
No. I say this as somebody who does not watch late night TV.
Yeah. I say this as someone that shows my age because the last time I watched late night TV, it was Conan O'Brien. It probably hasn't been like that for 10 years. But anyways, all right, Shay. So this has been really fun having you on here. And now that we talked a lot about how AI impacts podcasts, let's think of the larger media landscape when it comes to content creation and media consumption. What's your thoughts on how AI is impacting all of that?
I believe that, well, let's start with how media consumption or media generation creation is just so much, like, it's much huger. Is huger a word? Bigger, wider, larger, more expansive, there we go, than it was when we were in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I think about it is the time in your life when you're the most curious and you are in a space to do nothing but learn is when you're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I think about this, I think about a friend of mine that I had in high school. Shout out to Nick Waltersdorf. He wrote, directed, produced his own film in high school.
Wow.
He ended up going to USC Film School. He graduated from there. And he just had this incredible passion.
Yeah.
And he made it happen. Now think if the school offered tools to make that happen for everybody else. And if kids can learn at that age in high school, think of what they can do beyond high school. AI is going to take away the barriers of accessibility, and it's going to allow the people who are at the most spongy parts of their life to go like full in on it. Like there's things that I know from the time when I was a teenager and a little bit younger that I won't ever forget. Like say like with baseball, I can name you every single team, each division, each league, what their ballpark name is, and that's because I learned that when I was that young. But if you ask me what like an OPS is, or OBP, or BABIP, can't tell you. Because that's things I didn't know then. I learned them now, but I can't. It just doesn't stick. So if you have all of that knowledge going to you when you are in high school, when you are prime to take it in, that's when you should be given these tools. And AI is so accessible that teachers can use it. Teachers shouldn't be afraid. I mean, they can be weary of what students are going to do with it, but
they should embrace it.
They should embrace it.
And this is a good, kind of relation to what I've been advocating for, which is the AI task force. All right, let's make Rhode Island this leader in this AI revolution. There's 5 pillars to the AI task force. One of them is education. Right? Let's work with K through 12. Let's work with higher ed so that we can incorporate AI into the learning programs, right? So like to your point, well, they're the most spongiest. Let's incorporate AI. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's embrace it. And then what we can do is we can have folks like your friend that you mentioned in high school, John Strungelhoff, that we can
Close.
We can take those passions and like you said, make it more accessible. Because nowadays, you can have an independent film passion artist create blockbuster level films because of the advancements of AI. And I think that's one of the big trends, too, is that it levels the playing field
or think
for
about,
folks.
like, even if you can't make a blockbuster level film, you can get close to that.
Yeah.
And somebody who has a producer that has the money can see that and can give you a chance.
Right.
What I think is it gets a lot of people closer to having that chance. Whereas they wouldn't have that. Before, like, think about it. Like, you wouldn't have, like, one of the AI tools is just enhancing video. Without that, somebody might not have the ability or the the opportunity to have a video or a camera with that quality. And I mean, somebody's going to look at a video with better quality a lot closer and with a lot more respect than one that's grainy.
Yeah.
And so it just gets you a little bit closer to your dream.
I love that. AI, bringing you a little closer to your dream. Very cool, Shay. And one last question I have for you is we always like to end it thinking ahead, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about what AI is like today, how it's been helping you in your role behind the scenes, doing the pre-production, doing the post-production, allowing you more time, more creativity. But where do you see AI in the future, whether you want to answer that in general or answer it within your space?
I don't know where AI is going to be, and that's the most exciting part.
Ooh, what an answer, non-answer that was.
I trained as a politician. No. One of the most exciting parts about life is that we don't know what's coming up. Mm-hmm. And it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. Very terrifying, but it's also exciting because it could be anything.
Right.
We could wake up tomorrow and somebody can announce a new AI tool that is going to enhance the marketing world. It's going to change the way that we do things, just like ChatGPT changed the way that we did things just this year.
Right.
Anything could happen.
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible. There are ways that AI is going to change this world that have not even been thought of yet. And that's really exciting to know that that's coming.
That sounds exciting. You're right. It's we're getting out of the mundane, the boring, the expected, and going into the unexpected. That is pretty exciting. And as a marketing agency or any type of business, let's say you're a business owner or you're growing your career and you're not at that top moment, well, you probably are going to be pretty excited because with AI, it's going to reduce the barriers, make it more accessible, and allow the smaller and medium-sized folks to get to that top, right, if we utilize it correctly. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, before we end, I'm going to flip the script on you.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to ask you some questions. Get back in my host chair.
Okay.
All right, so...
Now
Chris.
I'm just going to answer questions. This is fun. This is the easier part, I think, sometimes.
Answering the questions?
Yeah.
Unless you, say every third word. Yeah, it's a great place to be. Chris, how has your view...
Shay.
Christopher. How has your view of AI changed from the first episode of AI Wave to right now?
Well, that's a good question, Shay. When I first started this podcast with you and others, the way that the next 3 months were going to be was very unknown. The pace that AI was rapidly growing into everyday lives was extremely fast that first 3 months from March to June. And then the last 3 months that we've been doing this from June through September, or to September, what I've learned is that it did slow down that pace that was at a neck-breaking pace, which is probably for the best. So that's one thing I learned is thankfully, that it's still at an exponential rate, but not at a pace where it's just unattainable and unmanageable, which is great because it allows others that may be this is too much for me, this is going too fast, I don't want to embrace it. Another thing I definitely learned about is people are more scared than I'm. I'm a positive, opportunistic futurist. So AI is clearly something I'm very excited about. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of folks, whether it's my own wife or anyone, that is very hesitant with this whole AI thing. So listening to them, having folks in this seat like Brennan, that AI, I just had someone say, hey, I watched your episode with Brennan and it was really interesting to see you, the proponent of AI, and Brennan, someone whose industry is being completely dismantled by AI, but in the same room and talking about it, right? He said, that was pretty cool. And it's good to hear other perspectives of AI and to listen that, yeah, people are scared. Those feelings are true. My whole thing is if you keep your head in the sand, you're going to get pushed away, right? Like it's like AI's here. It's not going anywhere. It's not a fad, you know?
It's here. It's, yeah. Once the cat is out of the bag, it's gone.
Yeah.
That cat's not getting back in the
Right.
bag.
And Shay and I both have cats, so we know what that's like.
Love a good cat.
And yeah, that's another big thing. But I'm very excited about it still. And now that, I keep pushing this AI task force because this is the future, and everyone does get on board that. Why not have Rhode Island be the leader in this AI revolution? You pose that question, and they say, yeah, why not? And there's a lot more people on board than maybe I was thinking. I don't know if I was going to be the only person. From everyday folks that I talk into, networking events, friends, to the governor, right? They're all on board with why not. And the fact that Rhode Island's taken this proactive approach, although we got to hurry up or else it's going to be reactive, nudge, nudge. It's a proactive approach, and I think that's pretty special too.
And I think too that a lot of people are thinking black and white with AI. They think either it's going to be this great, wonderful thing, or it's going to be this terrifying thing that has the ability to completely dismantle our society. It can be both.
Could be both, or could be in the middle.
It could be in the middle, but while we're with the task force, instead of addressing one of them, like it's going to be this great thing that we need to create jobs that we can put people in, or like you said, like reactive, like we also need to think about like how we're going to handle our society. You can have both at the same time. It's not mutually exclusive. And so I think the best way for people to go about looking at AI is accept that there are going to be things that don't jive well with how our society is at the present moment, but we have no idea how it's going to create something better. We just have no idea.
And if we have that mindset that it can create something better, then you're more likely to create something better. And vice versa. If you have the mindset it's going to be worse, you're going to create your own negative destiny, right? So let's create that positivity. I hear a lot of folks that come up to me and say, hey, thanks for keeping this conversation going. I enjoy your podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube. We really wouldn't be anywhere without you. We really appreciate the support, liking, commenting, sharing, coming up to us and saying, hey, I really enjoy the podcast.
Let us know what your thoughts about AI are. Do you have any interesting tidbits like Dr. Paul's carrot bit?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like little things like that really put things into perspective. Or like how Shannon Curley said a couple episodes ago, like, you didn't want to make your own SOP, did you? Like, you weren't staying up at night just being like, I can make the world's greatest standard operating procedure. No, that wasn't you. AI can do that. Like, there's just like these little things that make you think, oh, actually, yeah, that's for AI to do. And so if you guys have any comments, tidbits, or anything like that, definitely let us know.
Yeah, and like how you want this show to continue on. We've done it a certain way. The first 10 episodes, we took a little break. I had to go to family vacation. I had to go to Nebraska. And then we're doing this reset. We have some great guests coming up. But we want to hear from you. Do you want to hear more about how you can utilize AI? Do you want to hear from others that are using AI? What do you want to hear? You let us know. We love hearing from you. And let Shay know, really. Or let me know. DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, whatever. Or shoot me an email.
X.
On X. I can't do that. It's
Nobody
Twitter.
can do it. Everywhere it's like Twitter, now known as X, or X, formerly Twitter.
Yeah. Always Twitter.
Always Twitter.
But send us a tweet, send us an X.
Yeah.
Let us know how you feel it would be best moving forward, because it's all about you and continuing that conversation, pushing this forward. Why not have Rhode Island be a leader in this AI revolution? What can you do to be a leader in your own field, and how can we make your life better with AI? Shay, you make our life better here at Trailblaze. Thank you for doing a great job behind the scenes, pre-production, post-production. Wouldn't be here without you.
Thank you for hosting a great show. we wouldn't have the show that we have without your personality as a host.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Tyler. First time behind the camera. And again, most importantly, thank you as well, audience. We love you. Have a great day. Well, there you have it, folks. The one, the only Shay Weintraub, producer of the AI Wave. Once again, we thank you for tuning in to our ever-growing podcast, and we really do want to hear from you. We just talked about it in this episode, so if you have any questions, comments, ideas, what you want us to talk about next, or how you want us to move forward, just let us know, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, jump on board and let's ride this AI wave.